Engineer, why don't you go just introduce yourself, maybe start off talking about how you got into this crazy hobby, career, obsession that everyone has.
All right. My name is JP Manza. I'm the head engineer over at Colorado Sound Recording Studios. I started, pretty much probably like most of you by just playing music, and, first time went into a studio with my band at 14 years old, got the tapes back and went, why does that not sound as good as I want it to? So I started just asking more questions and studying more. And when I got to be about 18 after I graduated college, I kind of told my parents I wasn't going to go to school and become a rock star instead. And they didn't take too kindly to that, so they told me I had to get some sort of college degree. So I ended up coming here, graduated here with a degree in audio engineering, and then went and studied at a school in Sweden, got a degree in music production from there, and had every intention of moving to New York after that, and ended up getting a gig at Colorado Sound pretty much right when I got back from Sweden, which was the studio I wanted to work at most in town anyway, so kind of worked out really well for me, and been doing that since 2004.
You did the Sweden thing.
Yeah.
That was did you know Julie Stratton?
No.
No, she did that.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a really cool part of the program.
Yeah.
Anyway, my name's Brad Smalling, and I own and operate Evergroup Studio. I got an interest in recording, kind of like JP, when I first started playing music. When I first started playing guitar, I learned a lot by ear, and I was playing along to records, and I kind of realized, like, well, how come my guitar doesn't, besides the fact that I had a really cruddy amp, why doesn't my guitar sound like what they're doing, and how does all this stuff go together? And that kind of started my interest in recording. I studied guitar in college, and it wasn't until really after college, and I traipsed through a couple jobs trying to figure out what I really wanted to do. It was like, oh yeah, there was this recording thing that I was really, really interested in, to the point I almost went to MTSU. Sorry, see you, but I almost went to MTSU for recording and didn't because of jobs, things like that. But I started
Middle Tennessee State.
Yes, sir, Middle
University.
Tennessee State up in Murfreesboro, which also has an amazing program. But and I started learning on my own, actually. I just dove in, and books, a very modest setup, and just grew from there. And as I felt that I had outgrown my gear, I'd buy a little bit more and a little bit more, and the next thing you know, my wife and I were talking about building a facility, and we did, and there we are. So kind of a long story, but...
We want to hear more about your studio. I think that's a pretty unique situation that we can bring in our next panelist.
Okay.
My name's Frank Maroney. I got into recording because, first and foremost, I'll tell you that I'm a songwriter before anything else. And I started writing songs in high school, and just I actually recorded a few songs at Colorado Sound in high school, but I got sick of paying JP, so I just sort of... I bought a Mac with GarageBand on it and started messing around, and then I got Logic, and I almost didn't become a musician. I went to school at CU Boulder for a year, studying physics, and decided I didn't want to do that. So I went to Boston for school. I studied songwriting at Berklee College of Music. And I'm from here, so when I graduated, I moved back, and I always liked being in the studio at Berklee, recording my songs, and so I got some more gear when I got back here and just started recording my own stuff and working with a few friends that I knew and people that just I met in the Colorado scene, and that's where I am now.
So, bounce back to JP. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the studio you're in? What would people see if they went in there?
Sure.
Just tell us a little bit in general about your
Sure.
situation there.
Colorado Sound is, it's definitely one of the oldest studios in Colorado at this point. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think it's been in business longer than any other studio that's currently in business in Colorado. It's built in 1981 by the owner Kevin Klock, and it's a really cool room. It's got kind of some unique designs in the sense that we have multiple sorts of rooms. We have a live room, a wood room, vocal booth, a couple different sound locks and stuff. And the studio was really set up with the idea that we realized we're not the cheapest studio in town, but we want to be one of the most efficient studios in town. So all the way this, the architecture was laid out and all the gear that we buy, we try to deliver the highest quality sound that we can as, like I said, efficiently as possible. I can always tell people, you can come to, go to another studio that's half the price, but if it takes twice as long and doesn't sound as good, you ended up spending more money on your record than if you did if you came here the first time. So we really try to select pieces of gear like our console is a full analog console, which personally I love. There's huge debate, and I'm not trying to say that's better than going all digital, but I'm a big analog nut, and but it's still fully digitally recallable. So every single setting on it, I can press a couple buttons and it snaps back to exactly the way I left. So if you come back to do a recall, I'm not spending an hour like with typical SSL automation trying to realign every single knob and stuff for every song. I can go from song to song quickly. I can start to mix while I'm tracking, do all the stuff that you would kind of do in a digital environment, but still have the advantage of working in a fully analog environment. So it's stuff like that we really feel like pushes the efficiency side and kind of warrants us being able to charge maybe a tiny bit more than the average studio in town does.
Right. At some point, please tell us about the clasp system.
Sure, absolutely.
I think there's another question.
Yeah. I mean, if you want me to expand on anything too, let me know.
Brad, why don't you tell us a little about your setup?
Sure. If Colorado Sound is considered a large facility, and they are, it's a beautiful facility. We've been there. We're probably considered a mid facility.
Mm-hmm.
We have been open now 6 years. We're located in Evergreen. It's about 45 minutes from here. And we're on 4.5 acres up near the National Forest, which makes it a really nice retreat for artists. The artists that come to us are looking for something a little different. They want to get out of the city. They want to get away from distractions. Cell service gets a little spotty, things like that. They can turn off cell phones and laptops and things like that and really focus on making music. The studio was designed by Wes Lachaud, who is a great facility designer. He's did Mitch Easter's Fiddleatorium, who Mitch Easter is responsible for some of our early REM recordings. He did the Puss Cavern in California, where Cake did some of their early work, I believe. And he definitely did Kurt Ballou's Place on the East Coast, and the hardcore nuts will know him from Converge. So when we saw Wes's credits, we knew we had to have him design our facility. We designed it to be relaxing and incredibly accommodating. Like JP pointed out, we also try to be incredibly efficient. We hold that same creed. Like, you could pay a lot less for another studio, but we can get things done a little faster. And I have a feeling that JP and I work a lot the same way, actually. We've got we have an analog board. It's not a digital board. It's a Soundcraft. It's a 30-channel, 24 bus. We should talk about the recallability sometime, because we figured out a way to recall those faders using a Pro Tools session and get it within like 1/10 of a dB, and that works out really well. But we also like an analog board. We combine it. We use some plugins. We have our outboard. It's very hybrid with what we do. And to my knowledge, I think we're one of 2 solar-powered studios in the Denver metro area. I think it's us and Arsenal, I think is the other solar-powered studio. And some artists really like that. People trying to think a bit more about their impact, thinking a bit bigger than just making the music, but what all goes into that. So some artists seek us out for that, which is really cool. Yeah, that's enough ums.
Well, as opposed to these guys, my setup is super simple. My studio is a room in my house with some sound baffles up on the wall. I pretty much use all, I don't have any outboard gear. I have an Apogee Ensemble, which has 4 preamps. That's all I need. I have 2 microphones, an AT4050 and an SM57, and I record everything with those.
Those are great mics.
And yeah, and like my whole setup is simple. I was just recording with a buddy of mine, and he's learning the whole using preamps, outboard, and whatnot, and he's still working out the kinks. And for me, it just works great to do everything sort of in the box. And right now, when I track drums, I do go to a studio, unless I want to have the sound of electric drums, but yeah, I mean, I keep things pretty simple. I'm not a huge gearhead. I'm more of a producer than an engineer. So, yeah.
Are you doing a lot of MIDI production?
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff through MIDI. Because it allows me to play a lot of instruments. I play the piano, so through a sound bank, I can play, I don't know, as many really instruments as I need besides guitar, and I play that too. You don't always get as good of a sound like with strings. You have a fake cello, a real, and fake violins. And I found actually that if any of you wanted a cool technique for using a bunch of MIDI strings, is that if you can have a bunch of MIDI strings and then have like one real violin or one real cello and put that on top, and it sort of makes everything else sound like it's real.
That's a good idea.
Because it tricks your brain into thinking that, oh, that must be one real instrument, the rest must be two.
That's a great idea, man.
So, but yeah, my setup's pretty simple.
Yeah. Are most of the instruments native to your DAW, or do you have some third party?
I use Contact, and yeah, some native to my DAW. I'll mess around like with plugins and EQs and filters to try to get the sound I want if they don't have it.
JP, why don't you talk more about when you're recording at Colorado Sound with your equipment, what are the biggest sonic contributors to the end result?
Sure. I don't know. One of the biggest things for me, like bar none, I guess like you call it a sonic contributor, is to just spend some extra time setting up. I mean, there's nothing worse than rushing through a setup. I know every time I'm in there, the band is kind of looking at me and they're looking at the clock and wondering how much money they're spending for all this sort of stuff. But the biggest thing for me is to take the time to get the right instrument in the right room with the right mics and the right preamps on it.
Yeah.
And my philosophy is I hate the phrase "fix it in the mix." Like it absolutely makes my stomach just feel bad. I want when you come into the room, I want to be able to start pushing up the faders, and if I get the volumes nailed, the track is already rocking. And then from there, when we're in the mix, we're just enhancing it. We're just adding some extra special things here, a little bit of shimmer, things like that. I don't want to ever be fixing it, because the second you try to go fix something in the mix, you're spending way more time doing it than if you took the time to do it right in the first place, and it never sounds as good. So you're just already at a disadvantage. So I don't know, but the big things for me, I guess, within that is just a little bit extra time, really using my room, really knowing my room, knowing that, like I said, at Colorado Sound, I've got a live room, I've got a wood room that's a little bit more dead, I've got a vocal booth that's extremely more dead. Playing around with where I want to put each instrument in each room, how I want to mic it, those sorts of things go a really, really long way, in the end. And that's probably the biggest thing that I would say for it.
Yeah, absolutely. that's thank you.
There's a thank you for the fix it in the mix.
Yes, absolutely.
Brad, why don't you go ahead and talk about your studio? What seemed to be the biggest trademark sounds coming out of your studio? What contributes to those?
It's a great question. We find that really what that sound is what the artist wants on the record, and I'm sure we all do this, is talk to the band about what they really expect. I always want to ask them, like, what do you expect this to sound like, and what are your expectations of the record? What are we going to do with it? Is it just a demo? Is it for friends and family? Is this a vanity project? Or you're actually going to enter in a contest? We were talking about contests earlier. Or are you going to tour with this thing? And that tells me to some degree how much time to give them that expectation. Like when we do a setup, okay, if you're going to tour with this thing, if you're going to ask people for their hard-earned money for this kind of music, we need to do a proper setup. So really, where our sound comes from on a particular record, the artist kind of drives that, and then we make suggestions from there. Like JP was saying, really, really, really take the time to get the sounds that you want at the microphone. And I know you guys have heard this and you read it, but I can't stress it enough. It's the one thing that makes our job actually enjoyable and easy. Because if you have to go back and try and fix a kick drum because you just were lazy and just threw something in there, or a guitar part or whatever, or you're just like, oh, I'll just throw a 57 directly on the cone, which can sound absolutely horrible. Little things like that, you're just going to hate it later because you're just going to spend so much more time tweaking on stuff. So like JP, like a lot of engineers, I think, what defines the sonic sound of Evergroove is we listen to the artist. Where do they want to take the record? Do they want it to be a crazy lo-fi thing? Well, then I'm probably not going to put 15 mics on the drums, We'll get the basics and then play around with the room, knowing the room, things like that. There's not something particular about Evergroove, I think, that shapes a tone necessarily. I think it's the artist.
Frank, did anything come to mind with your sonic signature? What is shaping that these days?
I don't even know if I have a sonic signature yet. But yeah, I mean, I guess not to. I mean, reiterating what they said, I'm learning. Like, I was just learning. I had to learn the hard way. Don't fix it in the mix, and that's been a process that really I've found lately how valuable that is, because I used to just throw some mics up and be like, oh yeah, I mean, that sounds good, like, cool, and like now I try, I mean, when I don't have just my two mics, I try all those different mics. I tried different miking techniques, move it around, see where it sounds the best, and like if someone's singing vocals, tilt it, make them stand different distances, just all sorts of stuff. And I've really found how much better it's making my production sound. It's just like you sort of blow it off like it won't matter, but then you like listen to something where you take the time and it's just automatically before you mix it sounds better.
It's kind of nice and day.
I think one thing kind of just adding to that for some reason out there's like these, people think like when they talk about the words like mix engineers and mastering engineers, they like almost apply the words like you would apply wizard or something. Like, so this person does this like magical thing that can just take any song, no matter how it was tracked, and make it sound glorious, And all these big famous names come up, like a Chris Lord-Alge or a Dave Pensato, or guys that are just crushing it, making huge records all the time. And everybody's like, well, how can I get how come my stuff's not sounding like theirs? I'm like, well, first of all, they've got a huge budget. Secondly, they've got the best raw sounding tracks in the world. I mean, like the secret to a great mix is not necessarily doing any one thing to it, or using any sort of certain types of compressors, or whatever. Like EQ is not going to save a bad guitar tone if it just sucked to begin with. So the better you can get it on the tracking side, the better your mix is going to sound. Like, there is no magic button that just all of a sudden makes things sound a certain way.
You don't have a talent button?
I wish.
The anti-suck. Okay, so many moons ago, or a couple moons ago, you were in similar places, and you've kind of moved ahead at chapter in life. If you were to go back in time and be in this situation again and try to take advantage of the resources of a place like this, take advantage of the time, how would you spend that time? What would you invest your time in learning in to be prepared for a career at this? It's a jump ball.
I guess I'll start. Like, interestingly enough, I don't know, maybe I'll throw this out. Like, I'm not trying to make it sound like I love engineering and I love producing and I want to do it forever for the rest of my life. I actually just this semester started coming back here and taking classes in electrical engineering. Just because, beyond everything else, there's components that I want to design. I've got ideas for different types of studio gear and, different things that I want to build and, that, I want to be able to maybe, if it works out right, bring to market someday, things like that. So I definitely wouldn't skimp on some of the science side of stuff. I mean, honestly, when I came through here, like, they told me, like, all right, go ahead and pick out 2 math classes. And I took like literally intro to computers and some dumb math, like, 2+2 type class. Like, it was really, bad, the math classes that I took. And now I'm coming back going, God, I really wish I'd applied the scientific side of it a little bit more. The artistic side was always really easy for me. But just being able to know a little bit more about circuit design and what is actually going on inside of a piece of gear, and maybe how to write a little bit of a code to author some plugins and things like that. It just opens up a lot more potential for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, the as a studio owner, maybe this is a slightly different perspective. I think that's amazing. This is really smart, actually, to kind of know what's going on inside the gear, what JP's doing. As a studio owner, I would say you guys need to start honing your time management skills right now, because you're going to be the project managers, and the band's going to look to you to make sure that they're on track. They're going to look to you to make sure that they make their mastering date, and they're going to make sure that they look to you. They're going to be looking to you to make that CD release date. So you need to start right now managing your time better. You may do it great. I don't know. I know out of the gate I didn't. So that's why I'm bringing it up. And if there's at least one of me, there's probably another one of me out there somewhere. Really start being, learning how to be proactive. Do not procrastinate. Don't think I can call them back tomorrow. Because one of the few things that we hear from the studio is, wow, you called us back. Like in an hour, you called us back.
Yeah.
And I go, yeah, well, why is that a surprise? I go, I'm still waiting on 7 calls from other studios from a week ago. So it's about staying on top of your game, because it's a competitive market, but it's incredibly rewarding. But how you do that is, so I guess what I'm saying is start honing your customer service skills now. In your own jobs, in your own daily lives, your best friend calls you, you're like, I'll call dude back later, I'll get back to him. You never know, that might be really important. Call him back as soon as you can, just little things to make your time management better, your project management better. Start focusing on that right now, because you're going to need it out of the gate.
When our family, we had $10,000 to spend to redo our basement.
Mm-hmm.
We called 5-6 contractors. We're excited about our project. One of them called back by the end of the day. That's who ended up getting our $10,000 to their company.
Right.
They seemed the most excited to partner with us. And
Right.
who knows, somebody maybe could have done a better job if they called us.
Well, they were probably more enthusiastic about the project, and I think you probably made the right decision.
Yeah.
So.
I would say don't be afraid to suck. Just like you guys are learning right now. I wish someone had told me to stop being such a perfectionist, because I would work on stuff and it wouldn't be perfect in my mind, so I wouldn't share it with anyone. I wouldn't get the feedback that I needed. I wouldn't make the connections that I needed from and wanted to have from saying, oh, I heard he wrote a song or you wrote a song, it sounds like my friend's song, you guys should work together. Or don't be afraid to suck. You're gonna get better and better, and you're gonna think something's awesome, and then in 3 years you're gonna be like,
oh
man, that sucks. And I mean,
Or vice versa. You're going to think something sucks, and 3 years later you're going to go, wow, that was
true.
really
So
good.
bad.
That's happened more times
Yeah.
than I've expected. And and also it's I don't know. It's like when when you get taller and you never think you're getting taller, but then someone doesn't see you for 2 years, and they're like, holy shit, you grew. Sorry. But it's like that. You can't necessarily see yourself progressing because it seems like it's so slow sometimes, but really you're making these leaps and bounds. And you get that from just failing a few times, and then you get something good. And so you learn from each one of those failures, and then you get something good, and then you fail a few times more trying something new. And just don't be afraid to suck. Don't be afraid to fail. Just don't be afraid. Just don't make fear an option, and just keep going. Yeah.
Absolutely, that's well said. I would also add that there are a lot. I mean, Denver is an amazing musical town. There's a ton of amazing bands and amazing engineers and producers and mixers, and it's really is amazing. I'm not going to use that word again for a while. find someone whose mixes you like, maybe someone whose recording style you like. Take them your mixes. Like, hey, can I come to your studio real quick? Well, real quick. Can we just, do you got an hour? Can I buy a beer or something? We just listen on the bigs and hear what it sounds like, and so I know what my mix is gonna sounds like in a truly controlled environment, and can I get your input? I wouldn't hesitate to start networking right now.
Can we just call you up anytime you got a card?
I'll give you a card.
All three of you.
You call me at 2 a.m., you better be ready for my answer, though.
Great. I'm going to kind of go away from the panel and ask each of you a question here. JP, is there a certain genre that you feel like is a strength for you?
Well, I don't know. I grew up playing rock and roll and punk music. Like, that was my thing. And I still play rock and roll and punk music and feel right at home with that. And probably the majority of the bands that I work with are of that nature. I mean, I do a lot. I'm not, I don't go to the super hard end, side of it, but I definitely have got big indie rock scene that I'm part of. And with that, I've actually found a lot of crossover into folk and acoustic music too. I kind of at first I was like, why am I getting all these calls from all these folk musicians and stuff? And I realized it's because I had a more aggressive approach than maybe some other people might have when recording them. And they liked that. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do, because I'm sure I'm not getting calls from other people who didn't want the more aggressive approach. But I was willing to kind of treat a folk record like a rock record, which was, kind of cool. So I don't know. Right now, I mean, my favorite projects are kind of in those two genres, but I just spent all weekend mixing a big blues, CD with, Otis and Cassie Taylor and stuff like that. I do jazz. I've been, doing jazz stuff forever. I'm really all over the map with what I work on, so.
It seems like you have some good credits with singer-songwriters
Mhm.
in the area, Rob Drabkin
Mhm.
and other people. It seems like that's a unique situation where it's not the whole bluegrass band or the whole rock band coming in. How do you approach a project where there's just a man or a woman that comes in and says, hey, I got these songs, how do we make this onto a shiny disc?
That kind of goes back to, I guess, what Brad was saying first about knowing your artist a little bit. Working with one person is entirely different than working with a band for me. A band is, becomes, this democracy, and everybody has an opinion and everybody has a vote. Working with a single artist is nice because you don't have to listen to all these different things. You always get the answer of what they expect right from them. You don't have to wait to hear what three other people's opinions is. But the problem is you have to kind of go with the guy who's paying you the money. Sometimes you really are stuck with, like, hey, I want to do this. And you're like, hey, I don't know about that. But, so really take some time. I find with single, like solo artists and stuff like that, sitting down with them and, really getting to know them and what they expect out of their project, where they want to go with it. A lot of the same things that Brad was saying. I mean, I do that for every band, but I think it's maybe slightly more important with even a solo artist. A lot of times a solo artist really, they're sick of being a solo artist and they want to have a big production behind them. They want a full band of some sort, but they don't know how to go about that. And, so sitting down with them, figuring out like, where the style wants to be. Do we want to hire players? Do we want to do some sort of synthetic stuff using MIDI? What's going to be our approach for all this sort of stuff? I mean, there's no one answer to it, but it's really just getting to do that, and then using pulling from my own past experience, going, all right, well, you kind of want this sort of vibe on it. Well, I know two drummers in town that can cop that feel really easily. So let's call them. I kind of got an idea for a bass player. I'm thinking we probably want to do this as more of a live thing as opposed to separating everything out and overdubbing. It's all that sort of stuff that you kind of just pull from in your years of experience to go, I think I know where you're coming from. Let's and then helping them put together a plan.
So do you do a lot of pre-production then? Do you try and get like a pre-production session with
I try to do as much pre-production as possible. I mean, a lot of times bands will call you up and be like, hey, KTCL's got his competition next Wednesday that we have to get something in for, to be on the radio. So can I come in tonight and record something? I mean, obviously, if that's the situation, I'm not doing any pre-production with them. Right. But if a band is, to me, really wanting to make a real record, they're calling me a few months ahead of time before they even want to come in the studio. I start going over to their house. I sit down with them. I help them rewrite their songs and structure their songs, and tell them what I think, unabashedly. I mean, in the nicest way possible. But I'm like, you want to be on the radio? This song's gonna be less than 3.5 minutes. Like,
Yep.
that part needs to come out. That thing that you think you're doing on the guitar that's really, really cool, it's stepping on the vocal. Like, needs to come out. And just being really honest with them to try to come up with the best version of their song. Now, if they don't want to be in the radio, we're having a totally different conversation. I'm not all about just trying to make things pop just to be pop, but that's part of identifying what the goal of the project is, and really working with them. But yeah, pre-production is huge. I normally try to go to as many rehearsals as possible with the band, go out to dinner with the band, get to know them, know all the songs. I've got a notepad of everything. I try to have the structure of the songs. I try to have bar counts for everything, the keys for everything written down before they come in. So when they say, like, bring up so-and-so song, I've already got a Pro Tools template comes up with markers in it, all the key changes. If there's time signature changes, that's all programmed, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Practice being honest. Like what
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
said, practice
Yep.
being on time and calling people back. Practice being honest, because if you're totally honest all the time, that's what people are going to come to expect. And when you tell them, like, this isn't going to work for this, they're not going to take it personally if that's the kind of person you are. I've even done it, like, been afraid to step on people's toes, and I find it's way more productive if you can just be like, you know what, I'm not digging that sound. I think we should work even if they're in love with it. You just got to say something. You got to be honest with people when you work with them.
I always tell people right up front, I'm like, I'm going to tell you everything that I think and everything that I feel, and it's okay for you to disagree with me. I'm not. You also, with that, have to be really good at somebody saying, yeah, well, I don't like your idea, and being able to just let that roll right off your back, because you as a producer, you're not going to get to make every call you want to either. You're part of the band in the same sort of way. You get a vote just like everybody, but it's not always going to be in your way. So you got to be able to say what you think when you think it, and be okay with people disagreeing with it and going in another direction or modifying your idea, and just being really good, good at taking the feedback from who you're working with all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Great
that's
points.
a bit, different direction. Brad, I'm going to throw this at you. You're in a different situation from our guests, in that you're kind of in charge of a lot of responsibilities in your studio. I want to talk a little bit about the marketing side of it. And
Okay.
I realize you're talking to potential future competitors, and if you don't feel comfortable equipping them to compete
No.
with you, that's fine. But what can you tell us about, if we come out of UCD, start up a studio, what can we try to do from the marketing side to get people coming in our doors? Just put an ad in the
JP talked
elevator?
about this already. Mix as loud as you can all the time. Mix at 120 decibels and don't turn down. I'm just kidding. Actually, in full disclosure, I don't see anybody in here as competition. And not to... You're welcome to leave. And not to contradict what you're saying or anything, but if we continue to think of each other as competition, we're not going to grow as a community. And I don't want to get philosophical for a second, but there's some studios in town that are really aggressive in their marketing tactics, and they're very tooth and nail, and they try and steal clients, and they do all of these really weird, under-the-table, backhanded stuff, and all it does is make the artists angry, and the studios that they're doing that to find out about it, and so then therefore they just shoot themselves in the foot. So, first of all, stop looking around and thinking of each other as competitors. We should be collaborating as best as possible. I would love to do drums at his space. Some of my clients don't have that budget. So, I don't sit next to these guys and think of them as competitors. I think of them as mentors and as peers, and I would really encourage you guys to start doing that. I think that's really important. All right, so now that that's been said. Marketing a studio is very tricky. I touched on this idea of aggressive tactics and things like that. I think it's important to be confident, and I think it's important to be assertive. But it is, I'll say this one more time, it is detrimental to be aggressive. And when you first open your facility, for example, let's say you just got an inbox and an SM57, yeah, you should probably charge about $10 an hour, because you can't really provide a lot to the artist, maybe make good records, but they want to do full drum kits, they want to do whatever. Think about your pricing. Don't undercut just to get the job. That doesn't look good either. It doesn't look good. It makes you guys look bad. And it's not that it makes us angry, because those clients will come to us because the record generally doesn't turn out so well. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that when people are undercutting, they have the wrong focus. They're after the money. You have to be passionate about the project. And I'm getting way more philosophical than marketing, but all of this ties into you build your marketing kind of campaigns around these kind of ideas. If you undercut just to get the job, if you undercut just for the money, you're missing the whole grand scheme of why we're doing this. We're supposed to want to make records because we're passionate about making records. And if we continue to do, okay, say you gentlemen that that had a great response to my opening statement. Let's say you open a facility and you buy everything that Colorado Sound has, and you go for $20 an hour. What have you done to his worth and his value? It's now down to the floor. And will you ever be able to get back up from that? No. You buy euphonics, you buy this, you buy that, you got 87s, whatever, you charge $25 an hour. You hurt the community as a whole. And it's not that we get into this gig. If you're getting into this gig to think that you're going to get rich and drive a Benz, one of you might, maybe. Well, he probably will because he's going into songwriting. So he's probably being the smart one about it. Don't go into it with the money aspect in mind. If you do that, you're going to fail. And I honestly don't want to see any of you fail. So when you're marketing your studio, you need to take a positive approach. You need to be willing to share information. You need to be willing to give stuff away. I'm not saying work for free. But if someone, for example, like I touched on, say, hey, do you mind just taking a listen to my mix and give me a critique? You bet. A lot of studios won't do that because then they're giving away those secrets or they're telling them how to make that mix better. We get that from other studios. There's a studio in Ohio that we actually do mastering for, and he sends me mixes all the time like, hey, check this out, check that out. And yeah, he's in Ohio, but he was originally based out of Colorado. It's not about competition, people. It's about working together. So if we all stand, a soapbox for a second, if we all stand strong, this community will grow. So when you're thinking about your marketing, positivity, you need to give to get. There's a book out there that my wife and I, Jenny, read, and it's called Book Yourself Solid. And it's a little bit more product oriented in a way, but there's some really great ideas in there about, there's a lot of, look at what, we brought up Dave Pensato earlier. He gives away so much. And I would be willing to bet that if you looked at his schedule, he's gotten busier. Because people start to know him as an expert in the field. I mean, a lot of us already did, but he's exposed himself to so many more people by doing this TV show that he's doing. So be willing to give information away to get something back. People want to know that you're an expert in your field. They want to know that you're passionate about what you do. We're talking about callbacks. We're talking about owning your promises. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to have a mix ready by the end of the day, unless there's a really, really good reason why, and that does happen, have a mix ready by the end of the day. If you hit a technical problem, make sure you communicate with the client. Don't not deliver it, and then they call you the next day and go, where's my mix? Oh, yeah, sorry, I had to take the dog to the vet. They were waiting all night, So you probably were wanting me to say things like take out ads and do this and social media and blah, blah, blah. Do those, but know that, for example, print ads aren't all that successful. They're kind of good about letting people know that you're out there. The most important thing is going to be your work and your work ethic, how you treat people. You got that one chance to make a good first impression. Always do your best to make it. You're going to have to get out there and meet bands. You're going to have to get out there and drum up a business. You're not going to drop 10 grand, open a small facility or whatever your desires are, take out an ad in the Westward, which is ridiculously expensive, and then sit by the phone and expect to be booked by the end of the week. It's not going to happen. It's going to take blood, sweat, and tears. And you're going to have to get out there and meet those people, and you're going to be passionate about what you do. So I know that really wasn't so much about marketing; it's about kind of running a studio right now. But I feel like that's what needs to happen right now.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Nothing advertises better than a great sounding record. Yeah, that'll take you. You get your name as the engineer on a record that just blows people's minds, and you'll get phone calls from it.
Yeah, which goes all the way back to some of the first things that were said, which is take your time during setup. It goes all the way back to those fundamentals. When the band first walks in the door, your marketing starts right then and there. Actually, from the moment that they call you. So it's really more about the personal, the customer service, and then making sure that every record you put out is a record that you want your name on.
Frank, I've got a couple questions for you. I eventually want to ask you about your future and then I've heard a rumor about some future plans for you. But you are mainly a producer, and I'm curious, how do you end up getting business? How do you end up getting people to collaborate with?
Well, so I'd say mainly it comes down to like working with someone and doing something great, and then them showing it to their friends, and their friends being like, "This is awesome. I want you to do something for me." So like, I'm not a full-time producer. I'm not a full-time studio like these guys are. But I mean, that works. That networking works in every aspect. Like with writing, it's sort of the same thing. I write songs and then I'll co-write them with someone, and they play it to someone they co-write with, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is a cool song. I want to write with Frank," and then I'll write with someone and be like, "You should write with them," and it's really just like, and it comes down to what he said about like, just the way you treat people is really important. I mean, have fun. That's what you're here to do anyways. Like, you got into this because you love it. So love it and be nice to people. And yeah, we're not in a competition to beat each other out, because truth is, as soon as we start working together, we're going to end up making something that's probably better than if we just sort of like said, "I'm going to try and make something better than everyone else." It's like, what can we do together? I don't know. But yeah, I guess.
Well, what about the future? What's on the horizon for you? These guys are pretty established out there and situations going on. What do you have?
I'm actually, kind of leaving the Denver scene. I'm moving to Nashville in 3.5 weeks, so coming up now, and I'm mainly moving there for the writing scene. Like I said before, that's what I want to do, is be a songwriter, and I write a bunch of country music, and that's where it's at. And I think production will still be something I do, and something I want to continue doing. But I don't know. I mainly came back to Colorado because I love it here, and I was afraid to leave my family again. But it's gonna be another adventure where I get to really focus on what I love the most, and that's songwriting. So
I just have a couple more questions, and we'll take a couple from the crowd here. You guys have each, I believe, worked with a number of UCD students. Could you each let us know some of the students that might be in our midst that we may know?
In this specific class?
Yeah. People. Could you let us know who are current UCD students that,
Okay.
that we may know?
Well, and one of the big guys he's not a student; he's actually a teacher here. But Lauren Bregetzer, he's from Colorado Sound originally. I basically kind of ended up taking his job when he started teaching here. So I'm sure you guys will, if you haven't met him yet, you'll meet him. Some of the other, guys that I've worked with, past students, everybody from Isaac Slade from the Fray, Chris Heckman from the Epilogues. They both went to school here.
Chris is still here.
Yeah, I guess Chris is still here consistently. Yeah. Trying to think of some other people off the top of my head. I don't know. Come back to me on that one. I'll let you know in a second. Kaya, absolutely. I'm sorry. I forgot she was. I thought she was Boulder. Okay, she's here.
Used to be in Upper Boulder.
All right, never mind. Kaya. Yes, I'm sorry. I would have said her had I remembered. I don't know. I've done a few hundred records now, so and a lot of the scene, honestly, like I feel like the heart of at least the scene that I'm in, there's always some sort of attachment back to CU Denver. In some way, from as somebody who's in the performance side of it, or from on the technical side of it, or stuff like that. So there's almost every band I could probably draw some sort of connection back to the school somehow.
This was an unscripted question, so I put these poor guys on the spot. They didn't know they were.
Dang it! I reviewed too.
Brad, what about you? Are there some UCD students?
There are. We work with a band called the Mile Markers, and Julie Stratton sings and plays acoustic guitar for them. And she attended here. It was a while ago now, maybe 7 years or something like that. But she graduated, degree in recording, and Mile Markers are doing very well. They're an amazing band. We're starting a new record with them in November. Harrison Garcia graduated here about a year and a half ago now. I also run a small record label called Mountain Size Records. He did his internship with the label, but then I first met him when he was playing in a band called the Warings, and we did a record with those guys. And currently, I don't know the gentleman's last name. I didn't get it. I apologize. His name is Anthony. I think he's currently enrolled in the program, and I'm finishing a hip hop record with him and his group right now. And I see Brett out there, right? Or Finn? There he is. I've been in the studio with Finn before, so all the way out in Crestone. Actually, he attended a session out there. So I'm sure there's more.
Yeah. Right?
Well, let's see. Does anyone in here know Jillian Gruda? I'm producing an EP for her right now. And we were actually just tracking a song the other day with a drummer named Travis. Travis Page, probably tall kid.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. And bass player named Emerson from Abandoned Pictures. I don't know if anyone knows that band or him. And then I'm also working a little bit, or actually I work a lot with Olivia Rudine. Does anyone know Olivia? She's, you look familiar for some reason.
I played a show with her at the Walnut Room a couple weeks
Okay.
ago.
Yeah, I mean, I write with Olivia. We write at least once a week, and I'm also producing some of her original stuff and some of the stuff we've written together. She's awesome. If you are a writer and you want to write with someone who's amazing, write with Olivia. She's just
I've heard that about
a
her.
beast.
I saw her on Facebook. Is that the album that she's coming out with?
No, I didn't produce that one. No.
okay.
Was that Peacock? Justin Peacock?
Yeah.
They did that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's amazing. She's way more talented than she realizes.
Well, we'll take a couple questions from the crowd here. Let's start here, then we'll go back to
Frank,
Yeah.
I was just wanted to ask you about, you said you do a lot of MIDI and you do a lot of strings. Pretty much everything that I've done has utilized MIDI, and you mentioned your Contact, which is really cool.
Mhm.
I'm currently working with a complete Made Ultimate set.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find out if you have a preference of something else that sounds better as far as pure strings is concerned that you could use. I've looked at like the East-West Gold series, like the Colossus series, things like that. I'm just trying to find out from somebody who knows their stuff. As far as that's concerned, I'm only concerned about like symphonic strings and making things sound epic.
Well, these guys might know too, but I know that I haven't extensively used East-West, but I know that they're just amazing sample libraries. And for Contact, it's what I have, so I try to make it work as much as I can. The thing about MIDI strings that makes them not sound real is all the little inflections and everything that a real violin player or a real cello player would do. And like I said, the having a real player just as one of the instruments helps a lot. I use a lot of automation to, like, if someone's playing with their bow and they go a little faster, it'll get a little louder and then they'll slow it down. So I'll use a lot of automation to make, because it doesn't always hit like you want it to, and I just like try to play with it as much as I can to get this best sound out of what I have. But I know that those East-West libraries are amazing. Do you guys have any?
I mean, at our studio we got East-West, we got the Garriton, we got Miroslav, we've got, we literally have everything. Like if it's one of the major string platforms, we've got it in our B room. We have a great MIDI orchestrator at our studio named Tom Capek. My opinion, I've never met somebody who does better MIDI production than him, and he's just a beast with that sort of stuff. So they all sound different, and it's really he always plays a game with me when he gives me tracks back. He's like, what do you think I used on this one and stuff, and honestly with him it's normally a combination of, he'll use like the Miroslav for like the solo violin, and then he'll use the East-West for more of a sectional thing underneath. He does a lot of tricks like that where he's implementing a bunch of the different things. But if you're really interested in it, same sort of thing, call up the studio, come over, meet with Tom. I mean, there's nobody who's going to be able to give you better answers than him.
Yeah, actually, that's who I recorded with, was Tom, and it was all MIDI when I was back in high school. So that was like my introduction to realizing that I could do that much, and I'm still not as good as he is. But yeah, someday.
Let's go to Jamal.
Yeah, I have a little home studio in my basement. It's just really small, simple, and I could never afford to go to somewhere like you guys have. I was wondering if you think that you can still produce a great record if you take the time to put the sound, or if you need, to go with that giant analog board, that kind of stuff.
Yes, absolutely.